Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Phi Alpha Delta Candidate Forum for International Executive Board Officer Position Candidates. My name is Emily Baranowski, Phi Alpha Delta's Deputy Director, and I'm here along with Kwesi Smith, who he and I will be moderating tonight's forum, which was set up and is being administered by the Executive Office this evening. We're excited to have you join us. Kwesi, would you like to introduce yourself at all to the members?
Yes, good evening to everyone, and I hope that everyone is well and staying safe. My name is Kwesi Smith, and I bring you greetings from the great state of Arizona, which you all should be visiting the first week of August. We look forward to seeing you all here, hosting you in our city for the convention that is coming forth. Please dress cool because it is warm here. I've been with the fraternity for a number of years and the Goldwater chapter here in Arizona. And so thank you all for joining us today. I'm sure we'll have a lot of opportunity to talk as the evening goes on.
Thanks, Kwesi. Before we officially get going, I will explain how tonight's forum is going to go. Each candidate will have a total of 15 minutes to present an opening statement to you all and then answer questions from Kwesi and the audience. Candidates have not been given any questions or sample questions in advance. Please utilize the question and answer feature in Zoom to pose questions to the candidates, which us moderators will then read aloud. We'll only be answering questions that come through the Q&A feature. As we mentioned, tonight's forum features our candidates for International Executive Board Officer positions. These candidates are Connie Sosi-DeHaro, running for International Marshal, John Karasik, running for International Treasurer, Jennifer Schroeder, running for International Secretary, Nicole Winget, running for International Vice Justice, and Nicole Britta, running for International Justice. The candidates will be speaking and answering questions in that order that I just presented them, starting with Connie. We will pose our questions as they come in order. We'll get through as many questions as we can within that 15 minutes each candidate has. I'll be tracking the time and giving timing cues to candidates on request, and candidates have a 1-minute grace period to finish a thought if they're still talking when they reach the end of their 15-minute time. Some questions were submitted in advance, so if we have time after the live questions are answered, we will move on to those questions. Please be aware that this session is being recorded. It will take us a few days to process the recording, but it will be available on the P.A.D YouTube channel when we are ready for it. If you have any questions about the forum that is not specifically for the candidates, please feel free to directly email Andrew or myself at emily@pad.org or andrew@pad.org. I think we are ready to get started. Connie, are you ready to go?
Yes, I think so.
Fantastic. Then Connie, I'm going to go ahead and start your time for your opening statement. Please feel free to start when you're ready.
All right. Yat eshik doshadina conchetta sosi daharo yanishia tabahanishlo touchy ni bashichin honat ni dashache do tabahandashanale. Hello, my friends and family. My name is Conchetta Sosi-DeHaro. I am from the Water's Edge clan, born from the Red running into the Water clan. My maternal grandfather is one who walks around you, and my paternal grandfather's clan is also Water's Edge. This makes me a Navajo woman. I currently hail from the Robert E. Redding Alumni Chapter, and I am also from the McManus Chapter in District 5 at the University of New Mexico School of Law. I am running for the Marshal position for the upcoming biennium. As I served on the International Executive Board as member at large, I learned how the IEB functions and what our role is for the fraternity. We have made progress, but our work must continue if we are to ensure that our goals of diversity, equity, and inclusion are going to be achieved. I thought a lot about what the Marshal role means and what does it mean to me, not only as a P.A.D member, but also as an Indigenous woman. Yes, being Marshal is knowing and understanding Robert's Rules of Order. Yes, it is about ensuring meetings do run on time and efficiently and keeping order. But what does that mean to me as an attorney, as a leader, and as a Diné or Navajo matriarch? One word is clear in my mind, and that is respect. As a Diné woman, we understand the power of our words and the importance of being mindful of what we say. If elected, I not only plan to move forward with my goals that I outlined in my candidate statement, but also serve in this role in a holistic and respectful manner. It is important that we not only maintain respect around board discussions, but also with each other. Through mutual respect, we will continue moving Phi Alpha Delta forward into the future and ensure that we are respectful and inclusive of all of our voices and our vision. I'm happy to answer any questions from our membership. Ahehe, thank you for your time and for joining us this evening.
Thank you for your introduction. And again, it is nice to learn more information about you. Of course, I've been in communication and passing with you, in different committees and whatnot here in the fraternity. As a legal fraternal organization, can you explain the importance or challenges that a parliamentarian procedure creates for board operations?
Sure. I think one of the challenges is really about how are we going to make sure that everybody is heard and that everybody feels like they are heard. And I think that's one of the great things about Robert's Rules of Order is not only it does keeps the meeting moving along, but it also has an order of operations to ensure that everybody feels like they are heard. And as Marshal, I want to continue that tradition because I've seen that exercise by previous marshals such as Nicole and Nicole Winget. They have definitely provided a very great example of how important the marshal role is and how important it is for that role to make sure that everybody feels heard.
And would you, in a follow-up to that, because you spoke earlier while you were introducing yourself, you referenced about diversity, and I know we have some interaction with you in the diversity council that has recently been created. Just talk to us briefly about the importance of making sure that not only are folks heard, but in your perspective as Marshal, as an executive of the fraternity, how important it is to make sure that everybody's not just heard, but everybody is represented at the table.
Absolutely. I think it's incredibly important that we make sure that everybody from all walks of life are not only heard, but they feel like they are a part of the discussion. So I think that we've done that a lot with the DEI Council. We definitely have been able to hear from people from a wide spectrum of experiences, including people who are not only from different backgrounds, but also people who are also in other positions that we just didn't really take into consideration, to be quite honest with you. I mean, one thing that I've learned on my own was like when we were talking about convention and how are we going to make sure that it's going to be a safe and inclusive space, I thought I had someone come up to me and ask me, well, how are we going to make sure that individuals who are unable to hear or have difficulty hearing, or individuals who are have difficulty seeing, how are we going to make sure that they're included, and making sure that, if there's people who have mobility issues, how are we going to make sure that they are going to be able to attend convention? And I feel like as Marshal, that because I am going to be the person who's going to be there to making sure that things run efficiently, but also making sure the safe is inclusive for everyone. So I went and presented that to our executive office and asking, have we thought about these considerations and what can we do to make sure that everybody is going to be able to move around convention and then everybody's going to have the same level of enjoyment. And so I think it's just being able to take that Marshal role, not only just as a parliamentarian role, but taking it on as more of a leadership role as well, and making sure that you are not only advancing what you say you're going to do, but taking action and making sure that you're going to meet those goals. So that way everybody knows that when they can come to you with something, that you're going to deliver a solution.
And do you feel that this has been an area of opportunity for the fraternity as a whole to advance and to do better in this area?
I think it's definitely an area for everyone in the fraternity to have this opportunity. And it's not even just like in board positions or even just leadership positions in general. I think that if you really want change done, you have to take the time and the dedication to be able to do it. And I understand, a lot of us are busy. A lot of us have a lot of things going on in our separate, personal and professional lives. But I think that if we can just dedicate a little bit of extra time to making sure that we are going to not only continue advancing the fraternity forward, but making sure that our voices are heard, just those little things of time are going to make all the difference in the world. Because if you want to make sure your voice is heard, you do have to speak up. And yes, there are lots of us who are willing to speak up for you, but we can't tell your personal story with our voices, because behind your story, you have so much lived experiences and power behind your words that you can deliver your story in a way that we never could. And I'm always so happy when people feel comfortable with me to deliver those stories, but I also want to give them the support that I can to make sure that they are able to do so on their own.
Okay. Excellent. It's been said, my grandmother used to say this. I think she's just a whole lot smarter than I am, well, in some capacity. She used to say this statement. I didn't understand it till I got older now. She said, a bird and a fish could fall in love, but where would they live? And I used to think about that. Granny's crazy, but I start to understand it now. And certainly in the position that you're applying for, or that you have been nominated for, I think that applies in the sense that why the Robert's Rules of Orders are in place and in parliamentary procedures are in place, because you're dealing with a group of lawyers and you put us all in a room. We all have different opinions, and we have those on the far left, we have those on the far right, we have those on the fringe, we have those that don't give a crap, we have those of us that are sick of it. You know what I mean? We got, you know, how as the chief parliamentarian, if you will, the marshal, how do you deal with complicated conversations where there are opinions on the polar opposite? How do you make sure that or let me ask this, how would you navigate through these situations so that they are resolved, or some type of meeting of the minds handled in a fraternal manner?
I think it's important to make sure that everybody feels like they're heard. I know I can say that over and over and over again, but it depends on how you approach it, right? But part of that is making sure that we are having those respectful discussions with each other. And that's also very true, not just like in our interactions in the fraternity, but also in our professional and in our personal lives. It's about making sure that we are having respectful communication with each other, because we are all professionals and we are all adults at the end of the day. And being in this legal field, we have to not only ensure that we are representing the best of the best, but that we are going to model our behavior after that. And so we have to have those difficult discussions when they come up, because, you know, that's just part of being a family, right? We have to have those hard discussions, especially, you know, given everything that has happened within the past 2 years. We've had to have those difficult discussions about what's going on in terms of justice, what's going on in terms of, you know, very difficult decisions surrounding, you know, very hot button issues. And I think it's important that we have those conversations together and see what we can do to provide some sort of forum and making sure that people feel like they feel heard. And I think if there's anything that I've learned out of all of this, it's that people have often said that they don't feel heard. And I've sat here and I wondered why. Why don't they feel like they're heard? And I think a lot of it is just because we are not demonstrating as leaders that we are listening, and we need to do better. If we are going to advocate that we are going to be listening and that we are going to be transparent and that we want to take this fraternity to the next level and make sure that we are being diverse and we're being inclusive and that we are demonstrating that we want to advance equality, we need to demonstrate that on a leadership level and that we are listening. I think it's important that we do that.
In 3 short statements, just 1 sentence statements, from your position, should you be confirmed as the next marshal for the fraternity? 3 short statements of what you would do from your position as marshal to ensure that people, brothers and sisters, are heard and their grievances are handled properly or their positions are stated properly. 3 short statements. What would you do?
Be an active listener. Demonstrate that I have heard them by listing back 3 things that I've gotten from the conversation and doing a follow-up conversation.
Okay, excellent. Well, let me ask this to pivot to something else. What do you see as P.A.D's greatest challenges in the upcoming 2 years?
There's a lot. I only say that just because a lot has happened in the past 2 years, and we're trying to transition from a pre-pandemic world and then pandemic world and into a post-pandemic world. I think that one thing that we definitely are going to have to take a good, long, hard look at is looking at how we are going to be conducting convention voting. Because I think we've learned that as having convention online, that we have other options when it comes to convention, and we have other options when it comes to voting. And as somebody who works on voting rights, it's really important to me to make sure that we are not only going to give everybody a fair chance at voting, but making sure that their vote counts.
And that's one. What? Give me another one.
Another one that I definitely think of is one thing that I'm making one of my personal projects is how are we going to do more service to the law student? There have been a bunch of great programs that have come out during this past biennium, but one thing that I want to focus on is creating an alternative spring break program for our law students so they can gain legal experience within the field. And I think that when we create that program, we're going to have a lot more students who not only will continue being active P.A.D members, but will also help make them competitive candidates for when they enter the job market. And on top of that, we'll be building their network skills. So it's incredibly important to me that hopefully if things go in the right direction in terms of the pandemic, that we'll be able to start working on that in the new biennium.
And when you say build this program, you're talking about from your position as a marshal or from your district work that you do in the individual district?
From my work as a marshal, because I would like to see this implemented on a nation or international wide level.
Okay. Of the 7 core values, obviously, of the fraternity, which one of them resonates most with you?
The one that resonates most with me is diversity, because I think it's important to highlight just the beautiful diversity of our membership. Everybody has so many different experiences and everybody is so successful in the many things that they have done. And they have overcome so many challenges in order to be in the position that they are today. And I don't think that we do enough to pull from their rich background experiences to demonstrate to our students that, hey, you have somebody who's just like you. And I think it's important that we make sure that we continue doing that. Because when I first came to convention, I believe in 2014, no one looked like me. And it was very strange. And it wasn't until I saw former IEB member Araj Ahmed
warning, Connie. Excuse the interruption.
Walk onto the dais, and I was like, oh, there's someone who kind of looks like me. I can do that. And I want to make sure that we continue that. So it's so important that we pull from everybody's backgrounds and make sure we elevate everybody into leadership positions so we can have a rich, diverse leadership and a rich, diverse community.
You have 30 seconds to ask the folks to vote for you. What would be the last thing that you would say to them?
I will do the best that I can. I have demonstrated how committed I am through being a member at large, and I will continue doing that work. Please vote for me.
Thank you. It is always a joy to talk with you, Connie, and to be in your presence. And thank you. You are a dear sister. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Connie. And I do want to point out that you squeaked in with 5 seconds left. Excellent use of time. We will be moving on next with our candidate for International Treasurer, John Karasik. John, are you ready to start your 15 minutes?
I am. Good evening, everyone. Pardon, I'm sorry, Emily.
Please go ahead, John. Sorry about that.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. I'm John Karasik. I'm your current incumbent International Treasurer, and I'm seeking re-election to that office. I hail from the Robert E. Redding National Capital Area Alumni Chapter here in the DC metro area. That's the chapter that I joined as an alumni because I was convinced after graduating from law school and after becoming a practicing attorney that P.A.D. was a great organization to join, a great organization to be active in, and have the organization be a big part of my life. And everything that was promised to me about how great P.A.D. was and would be for me has been exceeded. So I've been very privileged to be an active member of the fraternity in several different levels, in several different roles, and I'm looking forward to continuing for 2 more years as your international treasurer. We've had, financially speaking, as tumultuous as the past 2 years have been, we've had an amazing biennium, financially speaking. We are a good $200,000, in terms of our current assets, ahead of where we were 2 years ago. That's not my doing. That's the doing of our members, our DJs, our chapter officers, our executive, office staff. It's the work of a lot of people. My role has been to keep an eye on our finances, making sure that we are heading in the right direction, that we're using our funds wisely. And I think I've got some unique skills and experiences that I've brought to that position. As a certifying official for the Department of the Navy and as a managerial auditor for the Navy, those roles have built up skills for me that I think have directly translated to my responsibilities as International Treasurer. My focus has been on stewardship of our finances, on reorganizing our governing documents. That was a huge effort the past 2 years, but I think we see that our governing documents are much better organized and laid out now than they were before. Serving on our executive committee, serving on our audit committee, and using my background, doing some deeper dives into some of our metrics to show things like whether or not there actually is an ROI for our convention, and if not, where should we be going? My goal for the next biennium is to address the huge surplus of what I'll call dead money that's sitting on our books that we could put to work, but because it's tied up in particular ways, we haven't had access to it. That those are funds that could be used for the benefit of our chapters, of our members, of our districts, and we haven't been able to do that. That's going to be an effort that I think is going to be important for the next 2 years. But my bottom line takeaway that I want everyone to realize is that we are in far better financial shape than anyone had a right to hope at the beginning of the pandemic. So with that, I'm happy to field any questions that may be presented.
Okay. Are you buying us all dinner after this? That's question number one. You yeah.
Sure.
It's good to see you again, Brother John.
Good to see you.
You were speaking, and I want you to continue along those lines. I was just enjoying listening to you. You get to learn a lot about a person and what they do in life, and I was enjoying listening to you. You started down the road. You're talking about the dead money thing as one of your priorities over the next biennium. Can you just give me a couple of more examples of that?
Absolutely, because it is important. So we have several chapters that have been inactive for many years, and
any like more than 10?
In some cases, yes. And we are holding funds for them. We should be able to use those funds, to benefit our chapters that are active now, our members that are active now.
And why hasn't that been done?
Because our policy doesn't allow for it.
When you say policy, you're talking about the finance policy or
Yes.
the bylaws?
Not the bylaws. The bylaws, permit it. The bylaws are silent to that, but our policy has not allowed us to do that. So that's something that can be changed, and I think should be changed.
Who's responsible for changing that policy?
Our International Executive Board.
And
Yeah,
have that.
so that would be me and my fellow board members.
Okay, so well, this would be something that would be presented to the board by you, and whatever the voting is, whatever the voting.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that's clarified for, all of the folks that are listening, that this is the process. Because obviously the subsequent question to that was, well, dang, John, you've been in the position for 2 years. Why didn't you do it? We're trying to get paid, why, and sometimes it takes time to discover that this is a problem.
Yes.
But I want to speak to it.
Yes, and that's a fair question, and I think if we hadn't been doing as well financially over the past couple of years, I think that would have lit a fire under myself and probably other members of our board to look around and say, okay, we need to pay for this, we need to pay for that, we need to cover this. Where can we find funds that are available? But we've been fortunate, very, very fortunate in that regard. Nevertheless, there's no good reason to not use the funds that we have available for the benefit of our members. So it's more than time.
Okay, give me another example beyond the dead money that's reserved for fraternities. What is another priority that you would have over the next couple of years, income or expense?
So one of the things that and I've started to do this with convention, taking a look at the ROI that we see, the return on investment that we see from convention. And quite frankly, I think I was surprised that we don't really have one. It's there's always been sort of an assumption within the fraternity that after convention we see this huge bump in recruitment, and looking back 10 years, I think we can see that doesn't really happen. So I want to continue to look at other events that we hold, our leadership summit, our mock trial competition, and see where we have and I don't just mean a financial return on investment in that regard. I want to look at these issues more broadly in terms of member engagement, in terms of member participation, and in terms of someone who participates in mock trial 1 year, coming to convention the following year, or becoming a chapter officer, or an ADJ or a DJ, or serving in other roles. So those are things that I want to do. Put everything that we do under a microscope, look at how is it benefiting us, and how can we improve each of these events that we're doing. And to do that effectively, we've got to have a very clear understanding of what those metrics are showing us.
Sure. And I'll try to circle this in, because you mentioned this reallocating funds earlier about, from dead money, from inactive chapters. Then you bring up this whole return on investment. It seems like those kind of play into each other, and they're likely going to be policy issues as far as the reallocation of funds, reporting as it relates towards return on investment, how those two things play together. It prompts a question that if you change this policy regarding inactive chapters or whatnot, because that's going to hit your ROI, return on investment, because this money is going to do something, even outside of the context of convention. How do you mitigate the risk down the road of reallocating these funds if an inactive chapter pops back and says, hey, we need our money? How do you do that? And then what impact is going to have on your ROI for funds being put out?
That's a great question. And I think the answer to that is, we have to have at any given time sufficient working capital to help either chapters that are reactivating or new chapters that are popping into existence, to help them with seed money. And
can I ask that? Yeah, I mean, if you can answer that without breaking any of your executive board executive rule, do we? And only answer that.
Oh,
John.
in terms of how we're financially positioned,
Yeah.
right now we have much more than enough working capital. So if a chapter that's been inactive for a number of years, popped up again and said, "Hey, we were looking through some of our old documents that we dug out of a closet, and it looks like you've got $1,000 of ours, or you've got $2,000 of ours." Absolutely, we're in a position to out of our working capital to get those funds to them. And we should always be in that position. We should always be in a position where if there's an issue that arises with a chapter, either reactivating, or if there's something that they need funding for, we should be.
Would it be fair to say that we're financially fluid enough to deal with any risk that would be associated with?
Absolutely, we are. We've got plenty of liquidity.
Okay, let me ask this. So as far as that, you go into the return on investment stuff. What are your goals if in reviewing the existing investment policies? What are your goals in relate to establishing new policies, and what is your reflection of the ones that you've reviewed or are operating under at this time?
Sure, that's a great question, and it's a timely question because our foundation just adopted a new policy in that regard. They've taken some of their investment, some of their corpus, some of their assets, and moved those into a managed account where they could get a higher return on the funds that they have available. They've peeled off a portion.
1 minute warning, John.
Oh, and I think doing something similar with us, just taking a fraction of our capital that we have available, that even if we were to lose it all, it wouldn't affect the operations of the fraternity. Put that into a moderately higher return investment portfolio. I think that's a reasonable approach for us. I think our foundation's doing that. I think the fraternity as a whole can do likewise.
And how much, just a real brief answer to this, and how much input do you think the general body should have in financial policies and investment? Little, lot, just
like every big policy decision that we've made, I think it should go out for comment by the membership. We're just the custodians. We're just the trustees, if you will. It's our members' money. So as in that role, of holding the funds for them, for their benefit, they absolutely need to be in a position to weigh in on whether that's a good idea or not.
Okay, thank you.
That concludes time.
Thank you so much, John. It's a great pleasure.
Thank you, Quincy.
Good seeing you. Stay well, my brother.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you, John. We will move on next to our candidate for International Secretary, the current International Secretary, Jennifer Schroeder. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Are you ready to go?
Yes, I am.
All right, then your time starts now.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Schroeder, South Sound Alumni Chapter, Goldwater Chapter, your current International Secretary. I am running for the position of International Secretary for re-election for this next biennium, and I would ask for your consideration and your vote to make that happen. My goals as International Secretary is to make sure that we are the most organized we can be and that we are exhibiting best practices. There are some things that are changing all the time, and so I think it's important that as your international secretary and custodian of records that I keep detailed notes and follow Robert's rules and get those notes and what's necessary to be in the minutes. So I think that as we move forward into this next biennium, one of my big goals is continuity and making sure that things we started this biennium do not fall off, because it's important to, put a bow on some of the things that some of us like to say, make sure that the small details are not overlooked. And so a lot of times when I go back and review my minutes and I see that we discussed something or, talked about moving or taking an action on an item, but that hasn't happened, it's important for me and as part of my job to reach out to the different members of the board and saying, hey, as a reminder, we talked about this. What are we doing to make sure we are following through and this is actually happening? So that's always a constant challenge, especially with everybody being busy in their personal and professional lives. So I think that my attention to detail and organization has really helped and benefited, and I would like to continue to do that. That's it.
Thank you. It's always good to see you, Jennifer. We go way back to law school days, and we're old now. Let me ask you this before we get into some of the postal questions. I'll talk like it's just Kwesi and Jen back at law school in the hallway again. You're asking me to vote for you again.
Yep.
Okay. Here's my question. And again, I say this to you, Jen, my sister. I want you to self-assess for just a moment for all of us. Look at you. You've been there for 2 years. When you came in the door, you had this list of ideas of things that you wanted to do. Now, 2 years hindsight, self-assess. These are the 2 or 3 things that I think I was really good at, that I did accomplish. Here are 2 or 3 things that, for whatever reason, good or bad, you know what I mean? I wish I could have put more into this or moved these line items along a little bit further over the last 2 years. A self-assess for us, 2 or 3 things either side.
2 or 3 things that I would like to improve more, 2 or 3 things that I did this last biennium.
Both.
Okay. So I think this last biennium, one of the things that we discussed was making sure the minutes are timely and they are put on the website in a timely manner and voted on in a timely manner for all of our membership to see. And I think we've been very successful for that. At the beginning of every meeting of the board meeting, we do a check and say, hey, have the meeting minutes been posted? Have they been passed? I think all of the times except for one where there was a call for discussion on an issue, those minutes have been approved and posted prior to the next month's board meeting. So
Why was there a problem?
There was a call for discussion. So we put it out for a vote and
No,
there was
one, but the whole thing about meeting minutes not being posted time and stuff prior to you assuming office, why was that a problem? What was the problem with it?
I wasn't on the board, so I can't speak to that.
But there was an issue you recognized that needed to be done.
Yes.
Go ahead. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's fine. So I think that was an improvement and something that I talked about during my last biennium during the campaign. That's something that has been addressed. Another thing that we discussed was I talked about the governing documents, and I worked on that with Brother Karasik and some of our other siblings to go through the governing documents. I wanted to make sure that we addressed those. And so that was one of my big things that I wanted to work on as an international secretary, because I thought it's important to make sure we have the rules and we have everything, and there was not any contradictions from when we transitioned over from the Constitution and bylaws to the FPM, because there were some things that didn't really make sense or unclear. And so it's important for me. It was important for me to make sure I understood. So as a general member of the board, if somebody comes up and asks me a question, I'd be able to answer it. So I think that's the second thing that I did. One of the other things was talking about email ballots and actually ballots. So I started doing a summary of all email ballots that were taken between meetings and attaching those to the back of the minutes each month. So then some of our members wanted a little bit more effective communication about what was going on, and some things are done outside of the board meeting. A majority of things are done outside of the board meeting and voting on certain initiatives or things like that via email. So I think that that was important for me to add on and make sure. One of the things I think we can improve is definitely, we're always improving, is the communication. And this is something maybe some people don't know that, but executive office is working on kind of redoing the reporter to be an online version, and I think that will help in our communication.
So you say an online version?
Yes.
Can I ask a caveat question here?
I will try to answer that, but that might be an executive office question, but I will try.
Okay, let me see if I can throw this in there.
Sure.
So what is your philosophy on the best way to record board actions in terms of specific content?
I'm not exactly sure what you're saying, so I'm going to try to guess exactly what you mean. So using Robert's Rules of Order, taking the minutes should be actually very brief, right? So only if there's a vote, if it passed, right? If there's actual action. I have much more extensive notes as to what happens during board meetings. So if we need to refresh somebody's recollection or go back and say we did not take action on something, but we discussed this, those are some of the examples that I followed up with via email to certain individuals, such as putting something out for a comment period and making sure it was put out for the comment period, making sure we're getting those comments and meeting those deadlines, so we can take board action at the following meeting or subsequent meeting.
And is this pen and paper or this recorded video?
I type everything. So, and if you watch some of our meetings on Zoom, I have, my two separate screens going on, and I'm quiet and I try to be on mute because I type almost verbatim what people say during the meetings. So it helps me listen. It helps me understand, follow through, and make sure nothing is missed when people discuss a certain topic or suggestion. So I try to be extremely detailed in my notes.
And this stuff is all cataloged.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask this: beyond the duties of secretary, what are some of your goals and aspirations as a board member in the upcoming biennium?
Sure. So for those of you that know me or can probably guess, I'm definitely a type A personality. And I'm extremely organized, and I don't like things to be left unfinished. So, one of the things that in particular is, I was working on the governing documents committee. We put a lot of substantive items on what we dubbed as the parking lot that were kind of a step two. They were beyond our charge. I think that in order to be complete and make sure we follow through with those items, we need to go back and look at that. Because right now, this biennium, we're wrapping up the different item numbers, the different things that we had to do for the governing docs original run through, like the privacy policy, etc. Sister Gerda and I were just finishing up that, but I think there were some other items that we needed to follow up on that would take longer. And so that's something I want to make sure that we don't miss or overlook some of those things. When we were meeting, every week, going into pretty extensive detail on the governing documents. So a lot of things you needed a lot more time to delve into the details. And so I think it's important that nothing is left open, that we close out that circle.
Yeah, so Jen, if you excuse me, Sister Schroeder, if you had a magic wand just for the next 24 hours as it relates to P.A.D, what would be the one thing that you would wave your wand and change immediately?
I have no idea.
Besides getting rid of me, what would you do?
I wouldn't get rid of you, Q. Let's see. I don't know.
Yeah, that's okay. And it's, if you don't know, it's a good question. The one thing, because some people have that one thing, that nemesis, that just that thing that irks them, that I would just change this. You don't have one of those.
No, nothing, can we all teleport and be able to spend whatever time with each other all the time? I mean,
I like it. That'll get you some votes. 10 years from now, what does P.A.D look like to you?
I think that it looks in some ways different, but I think it's really important to respect tradition. And so it's different. I think it's important to innovation, right? I think that it looks something where we have the ability to have not only regional events, but also national events. I think that would be something that would really bring us together as a fraternity, and do something more than just the DLTCs on a district level, but maybe do something more and involve more people geographically. Sometimes people, especially as in the Southwest or on the west side of the US, it's kind of hard to get to some of the events in the other areas. So I think it's important that we recognize that and maybe hold some different regional events. Mock trial was built out of District 5. I don't see my goal and passion. Maybe someday we can bring it back. Who knows? But I think it would be really great to see and experiment what we can do in areas logistically and financially to try to help maybe those who are unable to travel to some of the events like mock trial or leadership conference or convention, to make sure that those people are able to participate on the same level.
Let me ask this, how do you balance out? You have to always balance out relationship and responsibility. It's a part of what we do, especially in leadership capacity like you are in and want to be reelected to. How do you balance out your role as secretary with holding someone like the International Justice accountable regarding their duties?
I think it's just communication and being honest. And I think that's one thing, different avenues of communication, not afraid to say my perspective, understand somebody else's perspective, ask questions. That's a pretty big thing, is just to communicate and understand that sometimes when somebody's asking a question, it's for educational purposes. It's for educational purposes and not to, to try to cause any issues or anything. It's to truly understand, the different perspectives, because everybody, as you said, everybody comes from a different background and has a different perspective. So I think that's how we hold people accountable, is to really listen and understand each other.
Okay.
Or try to.
You got 30 seconds. What's your last pitch? Why should I vote for you? At what 30 seconds? You got it. What do you want to know before we go to the polls?
Sure. Just, I think, vote for me, because I do an excellent job and I will continue to do so. And I'm here to listen for you, and I'm here for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jen Schroeder is on the ballot. She wants your vote. Thank you, Jen. It's always good to see you, Miss.
Thank you, Brother Gracie.
Thanks, Jen. Up next, we will have our candidate for International Vice Justice, Nicole Winget. Nicole, are you ready to go?
I am, thank you.
All right, then your time starts now.
Thank you. Hello, siblings. My name is Nicole Winget, and I am here today to ask for your support as in my candidacy as Vice Justice. I am running because my skill set is helpful to continuing to move Phi Alpha Delta in a positive direction, both working with other people and serving as an example to help live our values and our missions on a daily basis. I strongly believe Phi Alpha Delta supports our members and our profession, and I want to continue to assist the growth of Phi Alpha Delta in filling those missions. The three main points that I want to highlight as why I am suited for this position. First is my leadership experience. I do have a diverse background of leadership from my military time. I'm currently still in the Navy Reserves as an officer. I am also a dean, assistant dean at a university. So I lead a large staff as well as a ton of students. To give a non-numerical definition of how many students. So I have leadership in the professional realm. I also have sat on several different executive boards. So I do have board leadership experience outside of Phi Alpha Delta. One of the things that's important to me from an international executive board is that we continue to function as a strategic arm of the fraternity, that we set strategic goals and we help the executive office tactically execute them. And so my experience as a strategic planner factors into that. Again, tying back to my roles in the military and in higher education, I do have extensive experience with strategic planning and executing those plans. And finally, I do bring a somewhat unique voice to the table, given I did practice law for a while, but I'm in a non-traditional JD job now. JD job is a mouthful. I run several military campuses in higher education, as well as teach in the traditional classroom, 100% online, and in a hybrid format. So I am on the front lines with undergrad students. I do work with law students occasionally as well. So I bring to the table literally day-to-day interactions with our student population, and I think that can highly benefit Phi Alpha Delta. So I'm very proud of what I have done so far. I haven't accomplished all of my goals, but I have knocked a few of them off, and I am asking for everybody's support in another 2 years on the board so that I can continue hopefully making positive progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Commander. It is always good to see you, and you're one of the most amazing sisters to me. I think I tell you that every time I see you at my you light me up. It's always great to be in your presence, and thank you for your service.
I appreciate that. It's my honor. I appreciate yours as well.
Thank you to our great nation. You started talking my language, as a Marine, you start talking my language when you start talking about strategy and tactics and stuff. This obviously is the vice justice at the highest levels of the organization that we all love and hold dearly. Do you see your role as more of a leadership role or a managerial role, or is it a kind of an equal hybrid of both?
I'm not sure I would necessarily say it's a managerial role. I don't believe the board functions. We do have a hierarchy, and please don't misunderstand when I say this, but I think we function more as a team than in a strict chain of command type environment. So I definitely look at this role as a leadership role, and very importantly, a support to the justice, international justice, as well as a sounding board for that justice. Somebody who's not afraid to say, listen, sister or brother, this isn't going well. Let's try this. So I wouldn't say it's a managerial role. I think it's more of a leadership and a lead by example type role.
Very excellent answer. And in that, because I think there's a lot of different, concepts about difference between leadership and management, and whatnot. And you are one step under the quote unquote face, of the organization, being the international justice. as international vice justice, God forbid something happens, and the international justice could not serve anymore. Would you be prepared to step into the justice position on day one if necessary?
So for those of you who have spent more than 2 seconds with me, one of my life mottos is Semper Gumby, always flexible. So while I hope this never happens, I am pretty darn skilled at adapting to whatever's thrown at me and making it happen. If that should happen, I of course would rely heavily on the executive office and the rest of the International Executive Board to transition as appropriate. So again, while I hope that doesn't happen unexpectedly, I really do. My life has been a series of adapt and overcome situations, and so yes, we'd make it happen one way or another.
Adapt and overcome.
Exactly.
You mentioned about transition. Another, obviously, it's closely associated word with that is succession.
Mhm.
You obviously see a lot of that in organizations, especially I think when there's transgenerational succession in our profession and academics, as you are, you know what I mean? You have a generation that's going into the sunset, new leaders that are coming in. What are your thoughts about succession planning and things like that, as far even and volunteers to serve on the board?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Institutional knowledge is really important, and oftentimes I think volunteer organizations lose some of that. Volunteer burnout is a real thing. If you've worked in any organization that uses volunteers, so I'm using another motto of mine that many people have heard. I am a very big fan of what I call the hit by the bus policy. I have been told I need to replace it with win the lottery and move to Hawaii policy. But I literally have a binder on my desk that is called the hit by the bus policy. It basically is okay, Nicole isn't here anymore. This is what we need to do to keep running for the next 30 days is how I think of it. But really any distance can be done. So I think we need to have that set up for anybody in any of our positions. We need to have a backup plan, at least somewhere on the shelf that we can pull off if something were to happen. And I'm glad you brought up succession because I do believe that institutional knowledge is important. And that's part of why I like how we rotate through our board positions. I've seen boards that reelect every single person every year, and it loses a lot of institutional knowledge. So having some level of turnover is good. However, I never want there to be a presumption that just because you've done X, Y is the next step there. I think there needs to be healthy debate every biennium. There needs to be a review every biennium. So it's a balance of keeping that institutional knowledge while not assuming that just because you've done something that you're the heir apparent, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, excellent response. Now I'm gonna, if I can, tap into the to Professor, Vice, Assistant Dean. Of course, because we have and we've had a lot of conversation about this on the Diversity Council about making sure that our non-JD participants are more involved in the process. You have a very unique perspective being a professor and an assistant dean. What are your perspectives concerning the challenges of current students and how P.A.D can support our student members better?
It's higher ed's very interesting right now, and my job is in undergrad, but I do occasionally work with our law school. So I'll speak from my strongest perception, perspective, which is the pre-law area. But I see it happening in law schools as well. The student demand is down across higher education. First time enrollment of students is some of the lowest it's been in generations. Wow. There's these are hypotheses, but COVID burnt a lot of people out. Students coming out of high school aren't wanting to jump right into college. There has unfortunately been a trend of devaluing higher education. I say unfortunately from my perspective, I'm obviously have a very strong passion towards law and education. So there's been a trend towards you don't need to go to college. That's not, you're wasting your money. Look at all the student debt, that kind of stuff. So I think it's a amalgamation of a lot of different things. So Phi Alpha Delta does have to be aware of that the student population hopefully we'll bounce back eventually, but right now freshman is a lower enrollment than it's ever been. The demand for virtual and hybrid events that's going to have to be the future, both in college and law school. I believe we have at least one fully accredited 100% online law school, and that's where things are moving. COVID proved to educators who said, I will never, ever teach my class online, that one, you can teach it. Two, the students will do just fine if you do it right. And some professors and teachers have started to want that over the sitting in the classroom experience. So we have been doing, I think the executive office has been doing an exquisite job of trying to balance all of those tensions of, we want to see each other, we want to be in person, but how do we serve the person that can't travel because they're suppressed? How do we serve the parent who can't travel with their kids because their kids are out of school in virtual education? And that's going to be a challenge for Phi Alpha Delta, is how we serve that group of students that needs that blended hybrid experience. I feel I rambled a little bit, so if I didn't answer your question, please let me know.
Oh, excellent answer. I wish you could keep going. Obviously, time won't allow us to do it. I'm enjoying this, with all of you, particularly you. Obviously, you have many leadership roles: assistant dean, lieutenant commander, the professor. You're on the board now. You my homegirl. That's a leadership role. What distinguishes leadership in P.A.D to you versus the other leadership roles that you have? What makes it genuine, dear to your heart?
So I love that one of our main focuses is service to the student and service to the profession. I believe that being a lawyer is a calling, and however you define a calling, I believe it is something special in your heart that says, I want to be a lawyer. And that goes hand in hand with, I think there's a calling for wanting to be a professor. And I've talked to a few of you about the fact, I think trial work and teaching in the classroom are the same thing for just a mildly different population. So Phi Alpha Delta to me spills, you had asked somebody else what one of their core values, their most important one. Mine, the one that speaks strongest to me is service, because I believe it's a give and take. It's a dedicating your time, your energy, and your spirit to making our profession better and helping our students navigate what is a really stressful career path from school all the way, I think, until we stop practicing and probably beyond. It's a stressful career path. So Phi Alpha Delta, if it really allows us to put the boots on ground and make a difference in our profession and with our students.
If you had, you heard me ask, I think Jen this earlier, if you had a magic wand and you could just wave it, and one thing about that would cause instant improvement to the organization, what would you wave your magic wand over?
So this is a personal, and this is admitting something that I haven't accomplished that I want to. So it's a little selfish to say this, but if I could wave the magic wand, I would fully execute the Leadership Academy that I've been working on, and we would have our first enrollment class. That's been an area, I'll be completely straightforward, of a weakness of mine, is I have not wrapped up the initial planning of the Leadership Academy. I think the Academy is going to help develop future Phi Alpha Delta leaders and help some of that institutional knowledge that I spoke to earlier, as well as many of the pieces that you've heard other people mention, the open communication, the transparency, the understanding on how Phi Alpha Delta operates. So that's probably a very self-serving magic wand, but that would be, if I could accomplish one thing right now, that would be what I would do.
30-second commercial. This is your 30 seconds of fame. The world of P.A.D is listening to you about this election. What do you want us to know?
Again, it's my unique skill set that I bring. I'm just different enough in life experience that I bring a unique voice to the table. My military experience particularly allows me to keep a calm and cool head when we have our meetings. And I have great ideas, a lot of passion. I love this fraternity. And I hope you'll support me in continuing the work that I've started and moving into the next biennium.
Lieutenant Commander, Assistant Professor, or Assistant Dean, Professor, the International Board Member, Nicole, you are a dear sister. We love you. Thank you for your service to our country, to our organization, to the academic community. Keep being great. And you got my vote.
Thank you for your time. I all back to you. Thank you.
Love you. Good to see you.
Love you too.
Thank you, Nicole. And in a very easy transition, hello, Nicole. Welcome. Are you ready to start your time?
I believe I am.
All right, floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you, Emily. Good evening, everyone. Brothers, sisters, siblings, thank you for being here. And thank you for being a part of this inaugural candidate forum hosted by the Executive Office. I believe that we need to continue to meet our members where they are, and this is just one step in that direction. I hope that we can have more events like this. And although it's the first time the Executive Office has hosted it, I certainly hope it's not the last one. I'd also like to give a special shout out to the Knoxville Alumni Chapter, who held a candidate forum back in the summer of 2020 before our last convention. And I think that was a catalyst to the Executive Office moving forward with this one. And of course, I'd like to thank everyone who was able to make tonight possible, Emily, Andrew, Quasey, and everyone at the EO as well. But tonight I want to focus on some of the contributions I've made to the fraternity since I've been on the board for the past 2 bienniums. So I was first elected in 2018. During that biennium, I worked with the board to help identify opportunities to move the fraternity forward, including improving chapter programming at all levels, expanding our international reach, and ensuring that our international events had a member value add to all of them. When I was reelected in August of 2020, I was given the opportunity to create a leadership diversity program that was focused on addressing the lack of diversity at all levels of P.A.D leadership. After being given this opportunity, along with the help of many, many people, I was able to create the Growing Our Leadership Diversity Program, which I hope will be able to provide our diverse members with opportunities and build their leadership skills, as well as help them foster relationships within the fraternity so that they can go on to be our future fraternity leaders. With the help of the rest of the International Executive Board and the Executive Office, as the International Justice, I would make it my primary, sorry, I'm at a loss for words right now. My primary goal is the word I'm searching for, to develop a strategic plan that would not only help guide us through the upcoming biennium, but for many years to come. Of course, I'll remain committed to our core values, integrity, compassion, courage, professionalism, service, diversity, and the one we've had to embrace a lot here lately, innovation. And I vow to make sure that we always take those core values into consideration whenever we make any decisions as an International Executive Board. So with that, my time is short, and I will save the rest of it for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole, again, Nicole 2.0. It's good. It's always good to be in your presence. And I literally, genuinely mean that. It's always good to be in your presence, Nicole. You started going down a path. I kind of wanted you to keep going about the future tomorrow, because you know, oftentimes when we get to stuff like this, especially at this level, I always tell people, put your notes aside, because sometimes, we know you can think, you're qualified, your resume, as long as Interstate 10 from California to Florida, you got all of the raw qualification. I think we can all see that based on, your submission to but Nicole, what's behind the heart of Nicole. I have this statement. I'm in the process of writing a book called The One Who Comes After Me. It's actually already done. The One Who Comes After Me. I think that's at the heart of leadership, especially at this level. Looking not just for what you do, your biennium, but the one who's coming after you, because 2 years from now, we'll be sitting here with someone else. And so my question would be, what are your top priorities in terms of strategic planning and training and all of that stuff that sets up the one who comes after you?
Thank you for that question. I 100% agree that it's important to set up who comes behind you. I've always approached any leadership opportunity as an opportunity to make a difference and to make sure I leave the organization better than I found it, even if only marginally. And so I would say in terms of strategic planning, The most important thing is we haven't done a strategic plan in almost a decade. That is unacceptable. We should have a policy in place that requires the executive board in conjunction with the executive office to continuously be thinking strategically, but also memorializing that strategy. I heard some other candidates talk about how it's one thing to do something, but it's another thing to remember that that was done, remember that you need to follow up on it, having institutionalized knowledge. In the day and age in which we live with all of the technology that's available to us, there's no reason that we can't have working documents, documents that are updated, documents that are growing, that are constantly changing, because who knows, we've dealt with COVID the past 2 years. Who knows what's happening in the future? So we need to be able to think strategically. What does law school look like in 10 years? What does the bar exam look like in 10 years? What type of time are students going to take between pre-law and law school? What about those members who think they might want to be a lawyer? They choose to go into law enforcement. They choose to go into higher education. Finding opportunities to meet all of those members where they are is something that I feel we can do a much better job of. That's definitely an opportunity we have to move forward in this organization. And frankly, to make sure that we continue to thrive, we need to be adaptable. We need to think strategically, and we need to talk to people like Nicole Winget and find out, hey, what are the kids saying? I was in college over 20 years ago. I don't know what it's like to be a college freshman these days. I don't know what it would be like to navigate the LSAT. I don't even know what the LSAT looks like right now because I haven't taken it in over 20 years, right? So we need to do a better job of knowing where our members are coming from, what challenges they're facing, and how we can fill a gap or how we can meet a need so that they want to be a part of P.A.D, not only today, not only tomorrow, but 20 years from now. And if their children or grandchildren are interested in the law or a law adjacent field, that they want to become a member of our organization too.
Excellent answer. I when I joined P.A.D in law school, Jen was we heard from her earlier. I think she was the president or the justice at that time. And I walked into the room, and I think for a minute I was the only Black guy in the room, and she embraced me, said, "Hey, Q." I mean, this has been a long time ago, and made me feel welcome. What do you do as the international justice to make folks that don't fit what you would expect to be the norm for the profession feel welcome into an organization with the years and years of history that Phi Alpha Delta has, from your perspective?
Yeah, again, I think that's another excellent question. I mean, to me, that's personal. I was a first generation law student. I didn't grow up around lawyers. I didn't come from a line of lawyers. I knew some friends who had parents who were lawyers, but I didn't really know what it meant to be a lawyer. I didn't know what it meant to go to a professional networking event. I didn't know what it meant to network, to be quite honest with you. And so I think that not only is it important that we acknowledge that everybody has a different life experience, like I think Sister Societa Haro said earlier, but that they feel invited and included, because it's one thing to say, hey, all are welcome, but it's an entirely different thing to make people feel like they belong. And I think that's always going to be a challenge, but I think that if we can listen with our two ears more than we talk with our one mouth, I think that we can find a way to truly understand where our members are coming from and how we can meet them with the services that this organization already provides, and also finding out what additional resources they want to see. When I was a district justice, I used to tell law school chapters all the time, especially if they were in a rebuilding phase, hey, what do you want P.A.D at the University of Tennessee to look like? Okay, make it look that way. If you don't know, ask your members, do a survey, fill a need. That's how people feel appreciated. That's how people feel included. If people have ideas, let them run with it. Have them prepare a proposal, bring it to the board, bring it to a committee chair, a council chair, whatever the case might be, and make them feel heard, make them feel included. I mean, there's definitely a balance, right? We are a mighty organization with a small but mighty staff. And so as Sister Winget said earlier, as a board, we need to make sure that we're thinking strategically, that we're setting the strategy, but that we're making sure operationally our executive office can meet at the demands or meet the strategy that we set. And that's why it's important that they're a part of the strategic planning and not just an afterthought.
Do you think we have enough staff at the executive office?
In my perfect world, I know you didn't give me a magic wand, but I'm going to steal one real quick. But in my perfect world, I would give us about twice as many employees. But I also recognize and appreciate, especially with John Karasik, our incumbent treasurer here on the line, that, you know, money is a factor and we need to be mindful of the finances that we have. And even if we have a surplus, we shouldn't just go out on a hiring frenzy to get more people there. I do think that operationally, Andrew and his staff have done a phenomenal job of working together as a team. They all have individual titles. They all have the roles. They have the job descriptions that we all know. But those of us who've worked anywhere in our entire life know that the best places to work are the ones when no one feels like they're too important to do something. And if they don't know how to do something, they learn. But having said that, I think it would be great if we could have someone who is focused on curriculum. So we talked a lot about the landscape changing, pre-law, law school, I would argue even young alumni curriculum changing, right? So if we could have someone who specializes in curriculum for leadership training, right? We are running for the International Executive Board. None of us are perfect, and we can all learn, we can all grow, and we all need continuous training. So if we could have somebody on staff who their job is identifying additional training opportunities, then that would free up Andrew and Emily, who I know spend a lot of their time finding those opportunities for not only our board members, but also for other key volunteers and the staff as well. The other opportunity I think that we could have would be to have someone who is focused exclusively on fundraising. That is something that we've had in the past, but as people have left and as roles have grown, and essentially as our pre-law program has grown exponentially, we have had that as something that kind of everybody owns. Everybody at the executive office and everybody on the board for that matter is encouraged to help with fundraising and to help identify additional sources of income and partners that we can have as sponsors.
Okay, excellent answer. I'm gonna ask a compound question, so all of you lawyers that are going to object, your objection is overruled. What is your leadership philosophy about, you know, the board working together, volunteer staff, that kind of keeping that congruency? And then please segue into about your plans to communicate with the membership and encourage transparency.
Okay, so in terms of serving as the International Justice, obviously that would make me the chairwoman of the board of directors. My opinion of a chair position, not only in Phi Alpha Delta, but in other organizations that I've had the good fortune to chair, is that you lead from the front. So you are, as you said earlier, the face of the organization. All eyes on you, right? You need to make sure that every interaction you have with anyone, whether they're a potential member, whether they're a DSC member, whether they're a member of the staff, whether they're somebody that you meet on the street corner while you're representing the organization, that you are a great steward of not only our values, but also of the mission, vision, and purpose for which we were founded and which we continue to operate today. I would also say that, you know, we have always been a working board since I've been a part of this board. You know, again, going back to the team analogy from earlier, I think that I've been fortunate to work with great people who are willing to step up, and maybe if it's not necessarily in their description, hey, I've got bandwidth to take that on, or I could find somebody to help us with that. But we need to, again, be very cognizant of the fact that, you know, 365 days times 2, I went to law school for a reason. So that's why I said 365 times 2. It's going to go by in an instant. And so we need to be cognizant of what we can do and what we can accomplish. And to that end, my plan as the International Justice would be to release charges for the councils and the committees, the district justices, the rest of our key volunteers very early after the convention is concluded, so that people can know, hey, if I sign up for this or I sign up for that, here is going to be what I'm expected to do. Here is the timeline, here is the time commitment, and here is what I'm expected to deliver.
1 minute warning.
Were you finished with your thought? I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you. Okay.
I didn't answer the second part, but for the first part of the question,
Go ahead.
yes.
Take 15, 20 seconds, answer the second part. The transparency in communication. What do you folks want to know?
1000%.
Yeah.
So here's what I think. I think a board works when a board has the opportunity to do what they need to do to communicate to top. I think a membership supports the board when they feel included and they know what's going on. So we live in this world where we do everything by Zoom. Why can't we record every board meeting? Why can't, when Jen or whoever is the international secretary drafts the minutes are what she said they are and should be under Robert's rules. Here's a link. If you want to go watch and see what actually happened, you can. That would be one way that we could increase our communication. And then again, as others have mentioned, continuing with the comment periods, continuing to listen, continuing to make our members feel heard. And also just making sure that we're able to advance, move forward, and improve Phi Alpha Delta. Because if we're not doing that, we're not taking our job seriously, and we're not doing what needs to be done to ensure that this fraternity continues for another 120 years. Thanks.
Of that 120 years, for the last 18 plus years, you've served excellently. You've been a member, you've served excellently. And so on behalf of all of the brethren and sistren of our great organization, thank you for your continued service. And should the body confirm you as the next international justice, I'm sure you'll have the support of all of the brothers and sisters. Thank you for the 18 plus years of commitment to the organization. And thank you to everyone else that has participated today, Jen and John and Constetta and everybody, Lottie Dottie and everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. I relinquish my sin. Thank you for letting me serve in this capacity. Emily, it's all yours.
Thank you. Fantastic job, Kwesi. Thank you so much for your time and your care in getting through all the questions that were submitted. I know there were a few for a few candidates we didn't get to, but we did make sure that we at least acknowledged them so everyone could see what we didn't get to. It's only a handful, thankfully. And I'll take a leap of faith to gander that any of our candidates here tonight would be happy to speak to the members about anything that didn't get brought up this evening. But out of the efficiency of time and to respect everyone's evening, we will wrap up for the night. I'd like to again thank all of our candidates for being here. Thank you again so much, Kwesi, for your fantastic moderating skills. Very nice to have you with us tonight. As Nicole correctly pointed out, this program was inspired by Knoxville Alumni Chapter's efforts in 2020, and we do thank them for that. And we are looking forward to continuing this series with our next two candidate forums, both on Wednesdays. Not next Wednesday, that will be the May International Executive Board meeting, but picking up again in June 1st, will be the candidate forum for the International Executive Board at Large positions. And then Wednesday, June 8th, will be the candidate forum for the International Tribunal candidates. All of that information is available on PAD.org, all the links to register for these webinars, and we'll hopefully see you all there. That does conclude our forum for this evening. If anyone has any feedback on the forum, please do feel free to email me and Andrew. We are happy to hear it. And have a great night, everyone.